It's a quote that is, Braving the Wilderness is all about this, starts with this quote from Maya Angelou, that we're never free until we belong nowhere, we belong everywhere, which is nowhere, which is no place at all, which I thought was a terrible quote for many years. And I was like, why are you saying that, Dr. Angelou? But then I realized, and she says, the cost is high, but the reward is great. I think that's the thing, that I feel like I belong everywhere I go, no matter where it is or who I'm with, as long as I never betray myself. And the minute I become who you want me to be in order to fit in and make sure people like me is the moment I no longer belong anywhere. And that is hard. I mean, that's a hard practice. That's an everyday practice.
Who spent his career studying hope. I lucked into his research because when I had my list of words that all of these wholehearted men and women had in common, I took a combination of them one day for the millionth time, doing a keyword search in the academic literature. And I came up with his theory on hope. And it not only changed the way I think about my work, but it changed my life. And it changed the way I'm raising my kids. As it turns out, hope is not an emotion at all. I think most of us think of hope as a feeling of possibility, of positivity. I'm very hopeful. What hope actually is, a cognitive thinking approach. Hope is not how we feel. It's how we think. And here is the most, I think, profound news of all. It is 100% teachable. The majority, we can measure hope in people. They measure highly hopeful or low hopefulness. What we see traditionally in people who have high levels of hope is they learned it through parenting, through their parents, who either explicitly taught hope or modeled hope. And as you can see, there are three pieces of it: goals, pathway, and agency. What this means simply is people who have high levels of hope in their lives have these three abilities. They can set goals, which is in itself not an easy task. They can cultivate pathways to achieving those goals, and they have a sense of agency. And agency is simply, I believe I can do it. Here's the part that I think is so important. Hope is a function of struggle. Hope looks like, I've got a goal, it's reachable. I believe in my ability to get there, even if I have to. That hope is a function of struggle. And it's the product of not tying our failure to who we are. The biggest thing that gets in the way of this whole idea of agency and pathway is that if I fail, I am a failure. What we see in high hopeful people is that they can separate their achievements and their struggles and their failures from who they are as people. Shame, we believe, is the most primitive human affect or emotion that we experience. We all have it. What we know from research about 3 or 4 decades now is the only people who don't experience shame have no capacity for human connection. If you don't experience shame, it's because you have no capacity for connection or empathy. And so what we're talking about there is kind of some serious psychopathology. So shame is something we all have. It drives 2 primary tapes, or kind of ways of thinking. The 2 big things that shame drives is never good enough and who do you think you are? And those are vices, let me tell you. Never good enough. You know, it's funny because if I said, how many of you wrestle with shame? No one would raise their hand. But if I said, how many of you struggle with perfectionism? That would be different, right? Would that feel different? Yeah, it would feel different. Shame, birthplace of perfectionism. Where we struggle with perfectionism, we struggle with shame. So this is a really universal thing for all of us. And it's really best easily understood as the fear of disconnection. There's something about me, there's something I've done or failed to do, where our self-worth is tied to our net worth, where everyone's houses are supposed to look like stills out of the Pottery Barn catalog. You know, how many of you have received the fall Pottery Barn catalog? It's devastating to me. It is. I just want, for one autumn, for all the pumpkin crap to be outside and to have my kids in slow motion in sweaters. That's just one time, you know? We have a media that tells us what we should look like, how much we should make, what we should weigh, how many times a week we should be having sex. We got the rules. And no one's doing it, but everyone's pretending. The issue around shame is it's an absolute silent epidemic. It's so funny because no one will talk about shame, But if you look at the Nielsen ratings for the last 5 years, the shows that really capture the top 10, shame-based programming, reality TV. You want to know what courage is to me? What courage is to me is the ability to tell your story and like who you are in the process of doing that. And that's hard. Men and women who have high levels of shame resilience, what I found, and this is the work I've been doing for the last 3 years, have a tendency to have more authenticity. They live with a deeper sense of love and belonging, and they have a much more resilient spirit. And I think those are the things we're after. I think we want to feel comfortable in our own skin. I think we want a deep sense of love and belonging. I think it's a basic human need. And I'll tell you very quickly, if you were to ask me just from the data, what is the difference between people who have a deep sense of love and belonging and people who are struggling for it? The answer would be worthiness. That's the only difference. Men and women who carry a deep sense of love and belonging within them believe that they're worthy of love and belonging. The trick is no prerequisites. Not when I make partner, not when I lose 20 pounds, not if I get pregnant, not if my husband comes back, not if my daughter gets into Yale, not if I make the Fortune 500. No prerequisites. Just as is right now, worthy of love and belonging. And the last thing is a resilient spirit.